My name is Logan Reyes, and today, I'm getting married to the woman who saw me long before the world ever did. But if you asked most of the Hartman family, they'd still say I'm just a handyman. That's what they see: paint-streaked hands, calluses worn from years of labor, a beat-up Ford parked crookedly outside the modest apartment Camila and I share. It's funny how tightly people cling to appearances. They see a wrench in my hand and think that's all I am. They don't ask what kind of foundation I'm building beneath it. Camila knew. From the first time we met, me patching drywall in her friend's studio apartment, her barefoot and laughing because I'd somehow stepped into a bucket of white primer, she saw past it all. She teased me that day, called me Paint Boy. I teased her back, called her Uptown Girl. Somehow, amidst the banter, a spark caught fire. One date became five. Five became forever. Still, when I asked her to marry me, I suggested something bold. Let them think I'm just a handyman, I said. Let them talk. Let's find out who really loves you for you. Camila hesitated, not because she was ashamed, but because she knew exactly what her sister Brielle would do. Brielle Hartman was born with a silver spoon, then demanded gold-plated replacements when it didn't shine enough. Her judgment wasn't sharp, it was relentless. She didn't just look down on me. She tried to pull Camila down with her. From the start, Brielle treated me like an infection, something Camila would eventually heal from. She whispered things at family dinners when she thought I wasn't listening. Loud enough for others to hear, quiet enough for plausible deniability. I hope you keep some savings, Camila. His kind doesn't believe in 401ks. Or, so, Logan, you ever think about doing something more? She emphasized more, like it was a word too heavy for my blue-collar shoulders. But Camila never wavered. And neither did I. We planned the wedding modestly. No grand announcements. No excessive pageantry. Just vows exchanged in a small chapel that smelled of cedarwood and lilac, Camila's favorite scent. She said she wanted something authentic. I knew what she meant. She wanted something untouched by Brielle's judgment, untouched by the Hartman name. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting a tie I'd never liked. It wasn't my style, too polished, too preened. But I wore it for Camila. My hands, rough and scarred from years of laying tile and welding beams, looked foreign against the clean white fabric. I caught my reflection and smirked. Let them judge. Outside, Jordan honked once. My best friend since middle school, now my CFO and business partner in Reyes Developments. We'd built something real: construction, hospitality, infrastructure. But all of it under wraps. Jordan called it stealth wealth. I called it strategy. You sure about today? Jordan asked as I climbed in. You mean marrying the woman I love? Yeah, dead sure. No, he chuckled. I mean letting her family treat you like hired help one last time. I looked out the window at the fading skyline. Let them. They'll see soon enough. At the chapel, everything was just as we planned. Soft music, warm lighting, simple arrangements in dusty rose and ivory. But even then, I could feel the side glances. A whispered, "That's the groom," from one of Camila's aunts. A pair of cousins openly giggling when I walked past. I ignored it. My eyes only searched for one person. And then she walked in. Camila looked like a dream in satin and lace, her hair swept back in a low bun, her eyes locked onto mine like nothing else in the room mattered. She didn't just walk down the aisle, she carried herself like she was walking toward peace, toward home. And I was that home. As the ceremony began, I held her hands in mine and felt her pulse beating wildly. Nervous? I whispered. She smiled. Only about my family behaving. I've got worse enemies than flower-throwing bridesmaids. She laughed softly, and for a moment, nothing else existed. Just us. The pastor spoke. Vows were exchanged. I poured every ounce of truth into mine, how she anchored me, how she never once asked me to be anything other than who I was. And then, just as she opened her mouth to return the words, I caught a glimpse of Brielle in the back pew, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, waiting. Something told me she wasn't done. Not yet. But I didn't care. Let her plot. Let her twist her mouth into whatever insults she had left. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had built more than just houses. I had built this moment. Every nail, every dollar reinvested, every late night and early morning had led to this chapel. And soon, when the doors opened to the reception, the world Brielle thought she ruled would shift. Because I wasn't just a handyman. And today wasn't just a wedding. It was the start of a reckoning. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. I should have known Brielle wouldn't let the ceremony end in peace. She couldn't stomach it. The idea that her little sister had chosen me over the Ivy League bankers and polished trust fund bachelors she paraded through their family home like showroom models. We were right in the middle of exchanging vows. Camila had just said, "I choose you, Logan Reyes, with every part of me," and I swear the air held its breath. Then came the voice. Sharp, loud, poison-tipped. "This wedding is a joke." It rang through the chapel like a gunshot. Every head turned, every breath hitched. Camila's fingers trembled in mine. I squeezed them gently, steadying her, grounding her. She didn't look back. I did. Of course, it was Betrayal, standing tall in the back pew in a tight, overpriced dress that sparkled like spite. One hand on her hip, the other clutching her designer clutch like it was her last weapon. Her smirk was wide enough to crack mirrors. "You're marrying a handyman, Camila? Seriously? How embarrassing." Gasps rippled through the pews. Even the pastor froze. A couple of Camila's relatives shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "Oh no, she didn't." But Betrayal wasn't finished. "Oh no, she was just warming up." "You think this is love? Camila, you're settling. Settling for a guy who fixes sinks and wears discount shoes. This," she gestured around the chapel, disgusted, "this is the best you could do." I felt Camila flinch beside me. Her shoulders curled inward like she wanted to disappear. My heart ached for her. This was her day. She deserved soft music, warm tears, and the sacredness of a vow, not this circus act Betrayal was staging. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. Betrayal turned again, facing the guests. Her voice lifted like she was on stage. "No wonder Mom didn't show up. She couldn't bear to watch her daughter throw her life away for a mechanic with a rust bucket for a car." That one hit harder than I expected. Camila's mother had RSVP'd no without a reason, and I knew Camila hoped against hope, she'd change her mind. She hadn't. And now Betrayal had weaponized that absence like a dagger. Camila's lip quivered. Her eyes glassed over. The chapel fell into a heavy silence, the kind that makes you want to crawl out of your skin. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward us, not in judgment, but in shock, waiting to see how we'd respond. That's when Jordan leaned toward me from his seat behind. Calm, smooth as ever. "Want me to handle it?" he murmured. His voice was quiet, just for me. I shook my head slowly. "Not yet." He gave a slight nod. "Suit yourself. Just say the word." Jordan was more than my best man. He was the only one who knew the full truth. That I wasn't just a handyman. That Reyes Developments wasn't a name we slapped on signs for flair. It was mine. That the car parked outside wasn't rented. It was a collector's item I owned outright. That every dollar Betrayal assumed I didn't have was carefully invested, building the empire she was about to walk right into. Let her speak. Let her bask in this moment where she thought she had the upper hand. Because when the reception started, the illusion she clung to would shatter so hard, she'd still be sweeping up the pieces by sunrise. Camila looked up at me, her eyes flickering with apology and pain. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't think she'd actually. I leaned down, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "She's not ruining this. Not today. We finished this together. Eyes on me." She nodded, blinking back the tears. The pastor hesitated, unsure if we should continue. I gave him a subtle nod. We were back on track. Vows resumed. Rings exchanged. And despite the venom still hanging in the air, we said, "I do." When it was done, and we walked down the aisle, the guests clapped, but not the kind of joyful applause you expect at weddings. This was cautious, fragmented, confused. Betrayal had planted doubt, and it lingered like smoke in a room without windows. Outside the chapel, while the photographer scrambled to organize group shots, I caught Jordan watching me, a smirk dancing on his lips. "Still sure about staying quiet?" he asked. I nodded. "Let her enjoy the spotlight. I'll take the stage when it matters." He chuckled, reaching into his jacket to straighten his tie. "You've got the patience of a monk, man." "No," I said with a smile. "Just the timing of a man who built everything he has with his own 2 hands. Let's give her one more scene before the curtain falls." And with that, we slipped into the waiting car, a sleek vintage beauty Betrayal thought I'd borrowed for show. She had no idea the road we were headed down led straight to a place she couldn't touch with her designer heels. Because the joke? It wasn't this wedding. It was thinking she'd already won. The moment we pulled away from the chapel, Camila slumped back against the leather seat of the vintage car, her shoulders heavy, her hands folded tightly in her lap, like she was trying to hold herself together. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly on hers, thumb tracing slow circles over her skin. Her fingers were cold. Too cold for a June afternoon. "I'm sorry about Brielle," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes fixed out the window. I didn't answer right away. The hum of the engine filled the silence, and the tires rolled over the road with a rhythmic, comforting sound. I glanced at her, watching the way her eyes stayed locked on nothing, lips pressed together to hold back emotions that had no place on a day like this. "She's always been this way," she continued. "Even as kids, she had to win. Had to be the loudest, the smartest, the one who got all the attention. And I let her. For years." "You didn't let her," I said softly. "She just took it. There's a difference." She finally turned to look at me. "But today wasn't about her. It was supposed to be our day." "It still is," I replied. "And the reception, trust me, it's going to say everything we didn't." That got the faintest curve of a smile out of her. "You think they'll notice?" I chuckled. "They won't be able to miss it." The car, my car, was a 1966 Mustang GT, fully restored, black as midnight with chrome that could blind a man in sunlight. It wasn't a rental. It wasn't borrowed. It was one of the first luxuries I allowed myself when Reyes Developments hit its first million. To everyone else, though, it was just another piece of the act they thought I was playing. The truth was, this car had more value than half the guest list's assumptions combined. We drove in silence for a while, heading out of the city. Camila looked confused when we veered away from the Hartman family's estate. That was the plan. Her relatives were expecting something tame, an outdoor tent, maybe, backyard catering, folding chairs and champagne flutes filled with discount Prosecco. That's how they pictured me. That's what they thought she was marrying into. But we weren't heading to a backyard. We were heading to the glass house. Tucked just beyond the city limits, the glass house sat like a jewel in the hills, sleek architecture, cascading terraces, panoramic views of the skyline and river below. It was invitation only, ultra-exclusive, and had a reservation list longer than most careers. Most people didn't even know who owned it, which was exactly how I designed it. As we turned onto the private road leading up the estate, Camila gasped. She sat up straighter, eyes wide. "Logan, what is this?" I smiled, letting the car slow as the gates opened automatically. "This," I said, "is the part where the story changes." She stared out the window as we passed rows of meticulously trimmed hedges, valet attendants standing ready in pressed uniforms, and fountains that shimmered like liquid silver in the afternoon sun. The driveway curved upward, leading to the entrance, massive glass doors framed by white marble columns. "Are we allowed to be here?" she asked. "More than allowed," I said, stepping out and circling the car to open her door. "We're expected." The moment she stepped out, the staff moved in seamless motion. One took the keys. Another handed her a glass of chilled champagne. I offered her my arm, and we walked toward the main hall. Camila looked up at me, stunned. "How is this even possible?" "You'll see." Inside, the room sparkled. A string quartet played near the crystal waterfall installation, and every surface gleamed under chandeliers the size of small cars. The tables were already set, gold-trimmed china, personalized menus, floral arrangements that smelled like heaven. No potluck. No cheap centerpieces. This wasn't a budget wedding. This was a statement. And then the guests began to arrive. Their reactions were everything I hoped for. Camila's aunt, the one who had whispered in church, gasped audibly. Her cousin whispered, "Are we in the right place?" And then there was Brielle, strutting in confidently with her heels clicking like they owned the floor. Until she stopped. Her eyes darted around. She blinked at the valet, at the decor, at the staff addressing me as Mr. Reyes. And then she saw me standing at the host's podium with Jordan beside me. Her jaw dropped. "What is he doing here?" she asked one of the servers. Before he could respond, Jordan stepped forward with a grin. "Oh, you haven't heard?" He gestured toward me. "Meet the owner." Brielle turned, stunned. "You." I smiled. Calm. Unshaken. "Welcome," I said. "We're just getting started." As we stood at the entrance to the glass house, I could feel the electricity in the air. Not the kind that buzzes from overused sound equipment or faulty wires, the kind that hums when illusions begin to collapse. Guests moved through the glass-paneled doors in clusters, their polished shoes tapping on the marble floors, their eyes scanning the space like they had just walked into a secret they weren't supposed to know about. The ceiling soared, crystal chandeliers suspended like galaxies overhead, each table dressed in cream linens and gold detailing. The scent of roses and jasmine floated from centerpieces taller than some of the guests. Camila held onto my arm, stunned. "Logan, this is..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Her voice faltered, caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. I leaned toward her, lips brushing her ear. Let them see. The string quartet played something elegant but not pretentious, perfectly timed with the gentle chime of champagne flutes being filled. Uniformed waitstaff moved like clockwork, offering trays of amuse-bouches crafted by a chef who had earned his 3rd Michelin star last year. This wasn't some rented hall or a relative's backyard. This was the glass house. And it was mine. Camila's relatives stumbled in, visibly confused. The same people who'd barely looked me in the eye during the rehearsal dinner now looked around like they'd wandered into royalty's reception. Her cousin Carla whispered to her husband, "I thought this was supposed to be casual." I saw an uncle checking his invitation again, as though he'd made a mistake. But no, this was very much the wedding they had been invited to. They just hadn't expected this version of it. Then came Brielle. Her entrance was as dramatic as I anticipated, heels clicking across polished floors, head high, dress shimmering like a warning. She marched in like she still owned the narrative. But the second she caught sight of me standing beside the host's podium, Jordan at my right, a maitre d' respectfully bowing beside me, her steps slowed. Her brows furrowed. Her lips parted slightly, confused. She made a beeline for the maitre d', her voice hushed but urgent. "Excuse me, isn't this a private venue?" The maitre d' smiled politely, gesturing toward me. "Yes, ma'am. We're honored to host today. Please speak with Mr. Reyes for anything you need." Her eyes snapped to mine. The recognition spread slowly, like ink dropped in water, staining everything it touched. "You?" she said, voice sharp but already laced with uncertainty. "What are you doing here?" Jordan didn't miss a beat. He stepped forward and smirked. "Didn't you hear? Meet the owner." I could almost hear her world spinning behind her wide eyes. She blinked hard, like the truth might disappear if she focused enough. "But you fix toilets. You climb on roofs and patch drywall." I nodded calmly, straightening the cuff of my jacket. "And I also sign their paychecks." I watched her try to recalibrate, try to process this version of me that didn't match the one she'd built in her head. The one she'd weaponized in front of everyone, the one she'd used as ammunition to sabotage her sister's happiness. She wasn't just surprised, she was unarmed. Before she could come up with something snide or clever, Evelyn Park arrived. My lead investor. A woman of quiet power and undeniable grace. She swept through the room in a silver-gray gown and wrapped me in a warm hug. "Logan, everything looks flawless," she said, kissing my cheek. "As usual." "Evelyn," I said, returning the smile, "so glad you could make it." Brielle's jaw visibly tensed. Another staff member approached then, offering a bottle from my private wine reserve, one with a custom label embossed with my initials. L.R. Camila watched as the pieces began fitting together in everyone's minds. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't an accident. This was calculated. Camila slid her hand into mine and whispered, "I knew you had something up your sleeve." "Just a little reminder," I murmured, "that appearances aren't always the full story." As the guests settled into their seats, the shift was undeniable. People who'd looked down their noses at me were now eyeing me with careful curiosity. They weren't just eating hors d'oeuvres, they were swallowing their pride. Brielle, meanwhile, stood alone near the bar. Her confidence had drained like air from a punctured balloon. She tried to act composed, smoothing her dress, taking a slow sip of champagne. But she was flustered. She was unraveling. She cornered me when I stepped away to speak with the head chef. Her voice was low, tight. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I turned toward her, face calm. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" She looked away. That silence? It was an admission. I didn't wait for more. I walked back toward Camila, who was laughing softly with Jordan, radiant under the lights, her eyes now full of pride instead of apology. The woman who had chosen me, stood by me, defended me, was now watching the world finally see me as I truly was. And that moment? That was worth every second I'd stayed silent. I watched Brielle retreat from the bar with a drink clutched too tightly in her manicured hand. Her face was frozen in a practiced smile, but the cracks were there, small, jagged, and spreading. For the first time since I'd met her, she didn't have the upper hand. She couldn't spin her words fast enough to rewrite the reality standing in front of her. I wasn't just a handyman she had painted me to be. I was the man behind the empire hosting the very reception she tried to sabotage. Camila slipped beside me again, her fingers looping through mine. "She looks like she's choking on her own pride," she whispered, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I didn't need to humiliate her," I said softly. "You didn't," she replied. "The truth did that on its own." Across the room, Conversations had shifted. Guests who hadn't spared me a glance during the ceremony were suddenly interested. The whispers had turned to nods of respect. Eyes that once narrowed in judgment now widened in curiosity. They were piecing it together. Evelyn Park hugging me, the staff addressing me as Mr. Reyes, the wine with custom labels, the stunning venue none of them could have dreamed I had access to, let alone owned. My identity wasn't just revealed, it was undeniable. Then it happened. Brielle walked toward me, alone this time, her heels echoing across the marble like tiny declarations of surrender. She stopped a few feet from us and looked at Camila first, then me. There was something unfamiliar in her expression. Not pride, not spite, maybe confusion, maybe regret. "I suppose I owe you an apology," she said. Her tone was clipped, like the words had thorns on them. Camila's face remained unreadable. I took a slow sip of my drink, then nodded once. "Suppose you do." She exhaled through her nose, folded her arms. "I just don't understand why you'd hide all of this." I tilted my head slightly. "Because the way people treat you when they think you have nothing? That tells you everything." She frowned. "So this was what? A test?" "No," I said. "It was life. And you failed it." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The weight of the words settled over her like dust. Camila's grip on my hand tightened, but she didn't say a word. This was my conversation to have, my moment to hold. Brielle opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She turned on her heel and walked away, not storming off like she usually did, but quietly, like someone unsure of where to go now that the map had changed. From the side of the room, Jordan caught my eye. He raised an invisible glass and mouthed. Boom. I almost laughed. Almost. The night unfolded with an elegance that would be remembered for years. Course after course of gourmet food rolled out. Lobster risotto, duck confit, handcrafted desserts plated like art. Camila's eyes lit up when she saw the custom cake I had commissioned. A blend of both our cultures, our favorite flavors, our initials in gold script across the top. Our guests were treated to a feast fit for royalty, and for once, the spotlight belonged to the truth. Midway through the evening, Camila pulled me onto the dance floor. The music had slowed, and the string quartet played a piece we both loved but never told anyone about. She wrapped her arms around my neck, resting her head on my shoulder as we swayed under the crystal lights. "You know," she murmured, "this isn't just a wedding. This is a reckoning." I smiled against her hair. "You think I went too far?" "No," she said, pulling back to look at me. "I think you finally stood up. And I'm proud of you." I kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of us." Behind her, I caught sight of Brielle again, off to the side, alone, watching. She wasn't sneering or rolling her eyes. She just stood still, as if trying to understand the weight of what she'd missed all along. Camila noticed too. She didn't say anything, but I saw the flicker of sadness pass through her eyes. "Do you think she'll ever change?" Camila asked quietly. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I know I'm done proving myself." Camila nodded. "Then let's enjoy tonight. No more masks. No more waiting." And that's exactly what we did. We danced. We laughed. We toasted to the life we were building. Every doubt that had been cast on us dissolved beneath the truth. I wasn't the man they imagined. I never had been. I just gave them time to reveal who they really were. And now? Now they were standing in a building I built, eating food I funded, watching a love they thought would crumble prove them wrong, one beautiful moment at a time. Camila stood, radiant under the chandelier's glow, tapping the side of her champagne glass with delicate precision. The soft clink echoed through the room, slicing through conversations and drawing every eye to her. I watched the way her shoulders pulled back. Her chin lifted just slightly. She was nervous. I could feel it. But she stood tall anyway. The hush that fell over the reception wasn't forced. It was anticipation. No one quite knew what she would say. And after everything that had unfolded, that made her words feel heavier than crystal. "I want to thank you all for coming," she began, her voice clear, composed. "Even those who doubted this day." A ripple of laughter fluttered through the crowd. Awkward, uncertain, measured. She let the silence settle again before continuing. "I know some of you had questions, concerns, maybe even opinions you shared a little too loudly." Her gaze scanned the room, not searching for faces but making it clear she saw them. She'd heard them. Every slight, every side comment, every assumption. But despite everything, we're here. We made it. And I married the love of my life today. My heart pressed against my chest at the sound of her voice saying that. like the truth itself finally had volume. Camila reached out for my hand, tugging me gently toward the center of the room. I stood, took the mic from her, and faced the guests who'd spent months judging me from afar. My husband isn't just a handyman, she continued, still holding my hand as if anchoring both of us to the moment. He's the man behind Reyes Developments. And just like that, the room changed. You could hear the gasps, the sharp inhales, the rustling of silk and linen as people shifted in their seats, sitting up straighter. I looked around slowly, taking it in all. The way eyes widened, how some of the guests suddenly became hyper-aware of how they'd treated me over the past months. Camila smiled softly and handed me the mic. I let a few seconds pass. Silence could do more than words sometimes. Then I cleared my throat. I didn't hide who I was, I said, voice calm but firm. I just wanted to see who people really were without the distractions of status or money. A woman in the back, the same aunt who once asked if I'd be parking cars at the reception, turned red. Another man, Camila's cousin if I remembered correctly, looked away completely. I grew up in a neighborhood where no one expected more than survival, I continued. I started with a toolbox, a borrowed ladder, and a busted van that wouldn't go over 50. I didn't inherit anything. I built it, brick by brick, contract by contract. And I never wanted anyone to love me for what I had. I wanted to be chosen for who I am. I saw Camila's eyes welling up with pride. Jordan gave me a small nod from his seat, arms folded, content as ever. Evelyn Park smiled like she'd known all along that this moment would come. Some of you passed that test, I said, letting my gaze pass over a few of Camila's cousins who'd been kind, welcoming, curious without condescending. Some didn't. I didn't say names. I didn't have to. I'm not here to shame anyone. Tonight isn't about revenge. It's about clarity, and love, and truth. I paused, letting the next line fall softly. To love that sees beyond appearances. I raised my glass, and Camila raised hers beside me. Across the room, glasses slowly lifted, some with hesitation, others with genuine warmth. It didn't matter. The message had landed. We clinked glasses, and as the string quartet resumed playing, I leaned into Camila and kissed her temple. You okay? I murmured. I'm better than okay, she said. I've never been prouder of you. We drifted off the makeshift stage and back into the swirl of the evening. Conversations reignited, but the tone had shifted. People came up to us, offering compliments, suddenly remembering conversations they'd never had. A few apologized, not directly, but through sheepish grins and awkward small talk. And then there was Betrayal. She didn't speak. Not right away. She stood on the edge of the crowd, her champagne flute dangling loosely from her fingers. Her expression was unreadable, pride swallowed by something rawer. Something she wasn't used to carrying. Shame. When her eyes met mine, she didn't roll them. She didn't sneer. She just nodded once. A small, reluctant nod. Like the beginning of an apology she hadn't figured out how to form yet. Camila saw it too. She reached for my hand again and squeezed it. I think she finally heard us, she said. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe she just heard herself for the first time. Whatever it was, I didn't need it to be dramatic. This wasn't about breaking her. It was about freeing ourselves from the weight of other people's opinions. And with every word spoken tonight, I felt that weight lift. For the first time, I wasn't just defending my place at the table. I was owning the room. The rain came out of nowhere, thick, angry sheets pelting the city like the sky had been holding back tears for too long. Camila and I had just finished a late dinner at one of our favorite hidden spots, a quiet rooftop restaurant we used to visit when I was still patching drywall during the day and planning business pitches by night. We hadn't planned on staying out late, but we lingered, talked, laughed, held hands like the world couldn't touch us anymore. It was the kind of night you want to bottle and keep forever. We pulled up to our apartment, headlights cutting through the downpour, and that's when we saw her, Betrayal, drenched from head to toe, standing at our front door like a statue carved out of desperation. Her once perfect blowout hung limply around her face, makeup smeared, mascara running like ink on parchment. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, and her designer heels, those impossibly tall stilettos she never went anywhere without, were clutched in her hand. She wasn't just soaked. She was gutted. Camila saw her first and inhaled sharply. I didn't say anything. I pulled into the driveway, shut off the engine, and watched Betrayal through the windshield. She didn't move. She just stood there, like she had nowhere else to go. By the time we stepped out and approached her, she was shivering. But it wasn't just the cold. They froze our accounts, she said without greeting. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. The feds. Darren's company. It's all under investigation. Camila stiffened beside me. Wait, what? Brielle laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Darren's been laundering money. I didn't know. At least, I don't think I knew. God, maybe I did. She shook her head, voice rising in panic. It doesn't matter. He's gone. Just packed a bag and disappeared. The house is under seizure. They took my car. Froze everything. My jaw clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. I glanced at Camila. Her face was unreadable, but I could feel the storm brewing behind her eyes. I need help, Brielle whispered. A beat passed. Then another. Camila's mouth opened, but no words came out. I knew what she was wrestling with. The past. The wounds. The venom Brielle had poured into our wedding. Into our lives. But I also knew the kind of heart Camila had. One that never turned away from someone in need, no matter how many times they'd hurt her. I'm not asking for charity, Brielle added quickly, swallowing her pride like a jagged pill. I just need a place to stay. Somewhere until I can figure things out. Camila exhaled slowly. We don't have a guest room right now. We moved most of the furniture to storage for the remodel. I spoke before she could find a gentler excuse. We have a room above one of my job sites. Brielle blinked. What? It's clean. Private. Has hot water. It's not the Four Seasons, but it's safe. She hesitated. You mean like a construction site? I nodded. Exactly that. Camila folded her arms. You'll have to work for it. The look on Brielle's face was priceless. She was stunned, like someone had just asked her to clean her own shoes for the first time in her life. As in work? She echoed. As in earn your way. I said calmly. You said you don't want charity. That's the deal. She looked at Camila again, maybe hoping she'd soften the terms. But Camila's expression remained firm. This wasn't revenge. It was growth. And Brielle, for once, had to step out of the designer cocoon she'd wrapped herself in. I'll take it, she said quietly. Whatever it is, I'll take it. I gave her the address, the code for the back entrance, and told her Malik, the foreman, would be expecting her in the morning. I offered her one of Camila's old jackets and watched her walk barefoot back into the rain, heels in one hand, jacket clutched tight around her with the other. Camila didn't speak for a long time after we got inside. She just stared out the window, watching the rain blur the streetlights. Do you think she'll make it? She finally asked. I shrugged. That's up to her. Camila turned to me. Why did you offer her that room? Because she asked, I said. Because life has a way of humbling us whether we want it to or not. And maybe, just maybe, she's ready to learn. Camila stepped closer, laid her head on my shoulder. You always surprise me. I smiled faintly. Good. Keeps the marriage interesting. She laughed softly, but it faded into a thoughtful silence. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing things clean. And upstairs, in a cold, unfamiliar room above a site she once would have sneered at, Brielle was about to wake up to a life she never imagined. The kind that starts at rock bottom, with a hard hat, a timesheet, and nothing but humility to guide the way forward. The first morning at the site was rough on her. I knew it would be. The alarm inside the trailer above our downtown project rang at 5 a.m. No gentle sunrise lighting or curated playlist, just a sharp, grating buzz that Malik refused to replace because comfort breeds weakness. That was the world Brielle had walked into. Not one built for silk robes and lattes, but for steel-toed boots, thermoses of bad coffee, and calloused hands earning honest hours. When I arrived on site around 6:45, I found her sitting on the edge of a folding cot in the makeshift loft apartment above the trailer. She was in borrowed workwear, baggy khakis, a company t-shirt several sizes too big, and a pair of unused boots that looked like they were judging her right back. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and there was a streak of dried grout on her cheek. She looked at me like I'd caught her in the middle of a crime. Don't say it, she muttered. I didn't say anything, I replied, leaning against the doorway. My nails are gone, she grumbled, holding up one hand where her once flawless gel tips were now cracked, chipped, and painfully uneven. Do you know how much a full set costs? No, but I do know that if you'd actually worn gloves like Malik told you, they'd still be intact. She groaned. He made me sweep gravel. Like, with a broom. Who sweeps rocks? Apparently you do, I said, suppressing a grin. Then I dropped a box of bolts. All over the floor. Took me 30 minutes to find them. I smelled like concrete dust. I slipped and fell into a bucket of something I don't even want to identify. She looked up at me. I think the universe is trying to kill me. I stepped into the room and placed a wrapped breakfast sandwich and coffee on the crate she'd been using as a table. You survived day one. That's more than most. She blinked, genuinely surprised. Is this encouragement? Let's call it acknowledgement. You showed up. You didn't run. That counts for something. She unwrapped the sandwich slowly. I thought I was going to be given paperwork or something. Not mop duty. This isn't charity, Brielle. You asked for help. You got a job. Downstairs, I heard Malik's voice barking instructions already. The crew was loading equipment, marking layouts, prepping rebar. I checked my watch. 10 minutes, I said. You're shadowing Ava today. She's running supply tracking and inventory. Brielle groaned again. Do I look like a spreadsheet? I raised an eyebrow. You look like someone who wants to eat lunch. And for that, you've got to work. She grumbled something under her breath, but she took the last bite of the sandwich and followed me down the stairs. That first week was clumsy. She dropped things. Misread labels. Showed up late once and got a 30-minute lecture from Malik that ended with her hauling 50-pound bags of cement back and forth across the yard until her legs gave out. She didn't cry in front of him, though. Just limped to the trailer and collapsed on the cot. But she didn't quit. Ava took a liking to her, surprisingly. She was blunt and fast-talking, with no time for excuses and a soft spot for women trying to prove themselves. She started assigning Brielle real tasks, nothing glamorous, but necessary. Order verifications, truck check-ins, vendor calls. Brielle fumbled her way through it, but she took notes. She asked questions. She showed up again. And again. By week 3, I saw something change. Her posture. Her tone. She wasn't walking around with her nose in the air anymore. She wasn't smirking or sneering. She was sweating, learning, working. One afternoon, I stopped by the job site to check on permits and found her bent over an invoice log, calculator in hand, pencil behind her ear. She looked up, startled. It balances, she said before I even asked. I smiled. Good. Malik said you caught an ordering mistake last week. She nodded, brushing hair from her face with a dusty glove. Yeah. We were about to overpay on steel brackets by like $4,000. Ava was impressed. You should be too. She hesitated. Then, for the first time, she gave me something that felt honest. I thought I was too good for this, she said quietly. Turns out, I wasn't even qualified for it. I leaned against the nearby post. That's the funny thing about hard work. It doesn't care where you came from, just what you're willing to learn. She didn't argue, just nodded, eyes lowered. Later that day, I caught Malik pulling her aside near the shipping containers. He said something I couldn't hear, but she nodded again. No eye roll. No sarcasm. Just quiet acceptance. And that was the first time I saw her without the mask. No jewelry. No shield. Just a woman covered in dust, learning how to build something real with her own 2 hands. And for the first time since I'd met her, I didn't see an enemy. I saw someone becoming. It had been 4 months since Brielle first stepped onto the site with panic in her eyes and a broken heel in her hand. And now? I almost didn't recognize her. I pulled into the Cambridge project lot around 2 in the afternoon. The air smelled like sawdust, fresh concrete, and sweat, home, in a way only builders understood. From the distance, I saw her before she saw me. Clipboard in hand, she stood beneath a shade canopy, giving clear instructions to 2 junior crew members. One pointed toward a delivery pallet, looking unsure, and she moved with purpose, walking over and crouching to demonstrate the measurement system Ava had trained her on. Her voice was steady, no trace of that haughty tone she used to wield like a whip. I stepped out of the car, and Malik walked over from the scaffolding, wiping sweat off his neck with a rag. She's ready, he said before I even opened my mouth. Really? I asked, watching her from across the lot. He nodded. Knows the vendors. Manages inventory. Double-checks orders without being told. She even stood up to the drywall guy last week when he tried shorting us on a shipment. I blinked. She did. Malik grinned. Tore his paperwork apart in 5 minutes and handed it back with red circles around all his lies. Told him, and I quote, I may not look like much, but I'm the one who signs off today. He turned purple. I chuckled. I would have paid to see that. She's not the same woman you dropped off, Logan, Malik added, his voice softer. She's working for real. Head down. Ego in check. I nodded. It was time. I walked toward her, and she noticed me just as she was checking off a column on her form. She blinked, surprised, then smiled small and cautious, the way someone smiles at a person they used to fear or resent but now understand. She straightened, brushing drywall dust off her pants and pulling the pencil from behind her ear. You checking in on me, or checking up on me? She asked. Maybe both. She handed off the clipboard to her runner and took a breath. I'm still keeping my head above water, if that's what you're wondering. I heard. Malik's impressed. Ava too. Her shoulders relaxed a little. They've been good to me. Tough, but fair. We stood in silence for a few seconds as forklifts beeped and nails were fired from air compressors in the background. Walk with me, I said. We moved to the far end of the site where a long row of units were framed and waiting for interior teams to take over. I glanced at her, then pulled a folded document from my back pocket. What's this? She asked, taking it. Your new contract, I replied. Project coordinator for the next phase of our Cambridge redevelopment. It's a real title. Full salary. Health. Benefits. She stared down at the paper, lips parting slightly. Why? She asked quietly. Why are you giving me this? Because you earned it. But after what I did to you, to Camila, the wedding, the way I treated you for years, why would you ever? Because we believe in second chances, I said, cutting her off gently. You didn't walk in here asking for forgiveness. You showed up and worked for it. That's more than most people ever do. She looked up at me, eyes wet now. You're serious? As a payroll ledger. Malik already signed off. You'll report directly to Ava for the next 2 weeks, and then you'll have your own team. Her hands trembled as she folded the contract. For once, she wasn't trying to hide the emotion. Camila knows, she asked. I nodded. She wanted to be here, but she said this was your moment. That broke her. The tears came then, quietly and quickly, but she didn't fall apart. She turned her face away, composing herself, wiping the corners of her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. I didn't think I could change, she whispered. Not really. I thought this was going to be punishment. Some lesson I'd suffer through. I didn't think I'd find peace here. You found yourself here, I said. She looked back at me, smiling for real this time. Thank you, Logan. It's not about thanking me. It's about not wasting the shot. She nodded, tucking the contract under her arm, and for the first time since I'd known her, Brielle Hartman looked grounded. No more armor. No more attitude. Just a woman who'd fallen, risen, and now stood on the ground she helped rebuild. Later that evening, Camila and I sat on our porch with 2 glasses of wine and the quiet knowledge that something good had come from all the chaos. She said thank you? Camila asked, genuinely surprised. Yeah, and she meant it. Camila smiled. Maybe people really can change. Only if they want it bad enough, I said. And she did. The Hartman family gatherings used to feel like obstacle courses, smiles sharpened like knives, conversations dipped in judgment, and every glance loaded with questions I wasn't supposed to answer. But this time, it was different. The tension still lived in the walls, sure, but it didn't have the same bite. Not anymore. The ones who once laughed behind their champagne flutes now shook my hand with forced smiles, trying to remember if they'd ever openly mocked me or only thought it. The backyard was decorated in that elegant but casual style Camila's family liked to pretend came effortlessly. White canopies stretched over seating clusters, string lights twisted between tall oaks, and glass trays of hors d'oeuvres passed through clusters of polite gossip. I stood beside Camila near the drink station, my arm draped casually around her waist, watching the latest version of the Hartman reunion unfold. Then Brielle arrived. No fanfare. No designer entrance. Just boots. She wore tin work boots, scuffed at the toes, laces looped tight. Her jeans were clean but well-worn, and her blouse, though neat, had rolled sleeves and faint creases near the elbows. It was the kind of outfit someone wore when they valued function over flair. And for Brielle Hartman, that was a revolution. People noticed. Of course they did. Her cousin whispered something, clearly referencing the boots. One aunt nearly choked on her wine. Another gave a puzzled glance like someone had brought drywall to a wine tasting. But Brielle didn't flinch. She walked in tall, calm, head high, but not in defiance. In quiet ownership of her new identity. Camila smiled when she saw her. Look at that. She didn't even flinch when your uncle asked if she got lost on the way to the hardware store. She's learning how to let people's opinions bounce, I said. We watched as Brielle made her way through the crowd, pausing to greet people. There was no bragging, no need to dominate the moment. She was just present. Later, she found me near the edge of the garden, where I was sipping a cold beer and pretending not to hear 2 second cousins debating whether or not they should invest in real estate. She approached with a slow breath. I should have worn heels, huh? I shook my head. You wore the right shoes. She chuckled, then went quiet. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. You ever think this would happen? She asked. This. I raised an eyebrow. Us talking like normal people? She shrugged. You forgiving me? I looked down at my beer. I don't think forgiveness is always a moment. I think sometimes it's a series of choices. You showed up. You changed. I saw that. So I adjusted. She nodded slowly. I still think about the things I said. At the wedding. Before it. Hell, for years. You're not that person anymore, I said. And honestly, I'm not the guy you thought I was either. Not just because of the money, but because I finally stopped caring what anyone thought. That's freedom, she said, a little breathless. Yeah, and it's earned. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded photo. I found this when I moved out of the site trailer, she said, handing it to me. It's from college. You and Camila. That dumb fair you guys went to. The one where she made you ride the spinning cups. I laughed. She almost threw up on my shoes. You looked happy, she said. Even back then. I was. She tucked her hands into her back pockets. Thanks for letting me fall. For helping me rise. I met her eyes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's helping them get right. Camila joined us then, linking her arm through mine. What's this? A truce being formed? She teased. Brielle smiled. I think we're past truce. I think we're rewriting everything. Camila pulled her into a hug, unexpected and full. You're welcome at our table, Brie. For real this time. Brielle's voice was quiet. I'll earn that seat. Every day. As the night wound down, I sat beside Camila on a wooden bench beneath the lights, watching as her family slowly shifted, some still rigid, others warming. But one thing was clear. No one looked at me the same. Not because I was rich. Not because they feared I'd embarrass them with the truth again. But because I had become undeniable. Not just a handyman. Not just the guy their daughter married. But a builder in every sense of the word. Builder of homes. Of trust. Of second chances. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I realized I wasn't standing on the outside anymore. I built my way in.